Good morning.
Bob Stewart, how are you doing?
Man, I am fantastic. Happy Wednesday. Ooh, Brandon Ramirez. Brandon Ramirez is on here 35 times. What is that? That's crazy. Brandon, how many windows are you logged in on? Courtney, Dean, Sal, Ricky, Miriam, Melissa. Man, we got a fun crowd here already. Look at this, Anthony. They're piling in the room. We'll give them a second to get in here. We love it. They're here. They're here. They heard that you were coming today and you were going to talk about how to price a property. Is that right?
That's exactly what we're going to be talking about today, Bob. How do you price a property? But not only how do you price a property, how do you price a property in Brivity? How do you price a property in Brivity CMA?
What? So we're going to use some of the tools that Brivity offers to figure out how to go out and price a property. So you're going to do this through Brivity CMA. So I think you're going to pull some stuff up. Anthony, now correct me if I'm wrong. Are you going to use like a real property in Bellingham, Washington today? Is that right?
Yeah, we're using a real property in Bellingham, Washington, actually not far from our office, just up the road in a neighborhood called Alabama Hill.
Okay, so tell me, so for some of the folks that are joining us maybe for the first time or they've been on our Brivity webinars, but they've never run across you, Anthony, give us a little bit of background on who's Anthony, how long you've been a real estate agent, how the heck do you even know how to price a property? Have you done it before?
Really, really good question. So yeah, my name's Anthony Zapata. I'm out of Bellingham, Washington. I first started my career about 12 years ago with Ben Kenny. And Ben, he started me out as an intern, and then I transitioned into an inside sales role. And then I got into sales and I started actually doing sales on my own with the team. And then I've been working my way on up. And now I co-lead the team with Ryan and Jolene. We have about 17 active agents that are selling. Last year, we sold just over 400 homes. We have about 55 to 60% of our business. They're coming from listings. So I'm not just taking listings on my own. I am active in real estate still, but I also have other agents on our team that need help with taking listings. So I also go on appointments with them as well. And I learned how to price homes originally from Ben before we had all these tools or before we ever bought any other technology to bring in. We were just using our MLS and just printing out sheets, and we would go to the listing. And now we have so many cool tools to go over. It makes it way easier and saves us so much time, whether we're going actively on a listing, maybe we're keeping up with our past clients, our sellers that have been there for a long time, keeping up with them and making sure that we can update them on.
This is going to be interesting.
Uh-oh. Did I lose you, Bob?
Yeah, maybe. I have Comcast internet. Does anybody else here have Comcast internet? Like, we'll see how this goes on my side, Anthony. I'm assuming that you have a good internet connection. So if we get a little choppy, you might just carry things here. And I believe the audience on that side probably can hear you okay. Am I cutting out on you?
Yeah, you were cutting out a little bit. Hopefully everyone else can hear me okay, and keep up with the chat box. Okay, I stalled out, Treva said. So hopefully my internet connection stays strong and we can get through this.
I think we both have Comcast. Is that possible? We both have Comcast?
We both have Comcast, right. Yeah. But mine's Comcast Business because I'm in the office today, Ben.
All right, well, okay, so before we ever go to price a property, what are you doing up front before you ever decide I'm going to spend the time to go price a property for somebody? Like, what does the front side of pricing a property look like? Wow.
That's a really good question, Bob, because I've been in many situations, wrong thing, time and effort and then it didn't work out, or I didn't look very intelligent as far as my realtor IQ goes in being a professional in this business. Me is we have to the person and ask the right questions to make sure we're doing that. So I think everyone can see my screen here. This is what we all need to have: a seller information sheet. A seller information sheet is going to allow us to get a little bit more information out of them. Now, some of these questions might be answered. Some of them might not be. It depends on what the situation is. Is it a listing appointment? Are we updating our database? Are we keeping in touch with people and just sending out some CMAs here and there? But we'll just pretend this was a listing, and I was on a group this morning talking about canceled expired listings. So we'll pretend that it was a canceled expired listing. And Bob took my call and he wants to meet with me, and I scheduled an appointment and I got some information that I got to fill in. So, I was trying to find out why he's selling and when he needs to be there. And I go through all this. But the most important thing, Bob, on here for getting prepared, not for only the appointment, but to make sure we pull the correct data, is to make sure we have this filled out where it says, could you please describe your home for me? Number of bedrooms, bathrooms, living room, dining, year built, all of that great information. Square foot, lot size. Maybe we have builders. Maybe there's special features. You went and did all this huge backyard project and you have this amazing outdoor kitchen and all these upgrades and things like that. So we need to figure all this out. The situation that we're trying to get away from, Bob, is what some agents do. They call it a two-step listing presentation or a two-step listing consultation, which means I go there once, I tour the home, I go over everything that we do to sell a home, and then I got to go back again with more data. And that's really risky, especially in our market right now where it's super competitive. I don't want to risk another agent being more prepared than I was going into the listing. So this will allow us to go in and be ready, 100% ready, in a situation that would allow us to get the property signed up, have the correct data. We could even put the correct price in there at that time, especially with the canceled and expired. They might be ready to go on the market this week. So I got to have all the correct data. I can't be coming with the wrong stuff.
I love this. There's a question on here that my eyes, maybe it's just, I don't know. Do you know how much homes like yours are being sold for? That's a fascinating question to me that I would imagine a ton of agents don't ask, if not kind of prompted by a sheet like this. What tend to be the responses to that question, Anthony? I'm fascinated by that one.
Yeah, I think it goes a couple different directions whenever I ask that question. Some people are up on the market and they know a lot of stuff that's happening. Some people have no idea what's happening in the market and they're relying on us completely as a resource. So the people that are relying on us as a resource will be like, I don't know, I haven't really seen anything selling around my neighborhood, or because we still are low inventory in our area, or well, yeah, I saw the house across the street. It went for 8 something, and the one down the road, I think it's active right now. I don't know what it's listed at, but I assume ours is probably somewhere around there. So they have something maybe to go off of, whether it was emails or they just keep up with their neighborhood. So I love that question as well. Also knowing what would be an acceptable selling price for you. I think that's one that a lot of us get scared to ask, like, oh, I don't want to ask that one up front. But I've had sellers say, if I could just get $650 out of it, I would be super happy with that. Okay, like this person's pretty reasonable, and I think they're going to be very happy with the data that we bring over. Or that's kind of a stretch, we can see what it's like on the inside. I'm not going to tell them that, but like I'm thinking to myself, we can see what it's like on the inside. Maybe there's something in there that I don't know about, or maybe I got to dig a little bit deeper with Bob. Well, tell me, what have you been doing in the past to upgrade your house, or has there been any changes made that we should know about? Well, yeah, we added on this addition, or we upgraded the bathrooms, or we brought in whatever it is. Oh, okay. Well, that makes total sense then on why you're thinking that $650 you could get an offer at, or would be an acceptable offer price.
Do you ever, is that ever a disqualifier? Does somebody ever say a number that, high enough to that question where you're like, no, I'm good? Like, do you ever abort at that point, or will you still kind of take the meeting and try to talk them into some, some sense of reality?
Yeah, it allows me to prepare for the meeting appropriately, Bob. That way I go in there knowing, hey, they have this number in mind, and I have to bring the information that's going to show what the market's willing to bear. And again, this isn't my decision on what your house is worth. This isn't the seller's decision on what their house is worth. We all know it's the market's decision. What are buyers willing and able to pay in our current market? So we always try to make sure that when we go on the meeting, they understand that, like, hey, I'm not deciding the price. You're not deciding the price. The market's determining the value. And here's what the market's showing us right now. And then we can provide that info for them to be educated and make the right decision. If we present it correctly, Bob, a lot of times after I go through all of the sales and things, before I even say another word, I ask them, what do you think about all the information that I provided? And most of the time, they'll tell me a number that's in the range based off of the data. Well, it looks like we need to be listing at 675 based off of what you just showed us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys,
right.
You guys are going to do 225, 250 listing appointments, somewhere in that range this year up in Bellingham. How many, like, would you say every listing appointment you guys go on, like all the appropriate questions are filled out here? Is this kind of a religious type of a thing for you guys? You just don't go out to a listing appointment without this filled out?
Yeah, I mean, in the past, I've gotten excited. Somebody wants to meet with me, and I get to go meet with a seller to have a listing appointment right now. One of the first ones that I got burned on and I learned from my mistake was the husband and we were cool, got an appointment with them. The wife wasn't there. She was in charge. I had the listing, like I had it, but she wasn't there. She had someone else. I wasted 2 hours of my day there. I wasted a couple weeks of following up afterwards. I mean, it was terrible, and I never got the listing. The guy really liked me. One of the questions on here is making sure that all the decision makers are going to be there at the meeting. So even when Ben was active in sales and he was going on a couple hundred listing appointments a year, the first thing he would do is grab this sheet, because no matter how good of a salesperson you are, you're always going to forget one or two questions. It's inevitable. So have this thing in front of you and make sure it's filled out. If you schedule the appointment, great. Follow up with getting this filled out. If you forgot something, great. Give them a call back and make sure we get this information confirmed. I don't want you guys going and having a 2, 3, 4, 5-step listing appointment to maybe never get the business. Let's keep it at a 1-step listing appointment by filling this out completely.
Love it. Okay. So if you guys want to get your hands on this, you can get it. Like if you go into the question mark inside of your Brivity CRM, you can type seller information sheet, I believe, or in our Facebook Brivity Masterminds group, you can go search for files in there for seller information sheet. Anthony, what we call this the yellow sheet, I think, is what you guys print this on yellow paper around the office, and this is the yellow sheet, right?
Yeah, we have it like that because we also have a buyer information sheet that's very similar. It has questions to qualify a buyer. Same thing, we have questions to qualify a seller. We print them on 2 different color pieces of paper. That way, when you're on the phone, you can just grab a quick one and start filling out the right information. So,
all right, here we go. So let's move on to the pricing part. Let's assume we've got all this information filled out here on the sheet, and now we're going to go do the work, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. We're not going to talk today about you presenting it to the actual sellers, right? And we're going to go through the work of building the CMA.
Yeah. Today we're going to go ahead. We're going to jump into Brivity. We're going to talk about like, how do you just make up a CMA, right? Like, how do you go through there? We could spend an hour in like the CMA and diving deep and trying to make sure all the data is correct. We're not going to be doing that today because we just don't have the time to do it. So it is going to be somewhat brief on doing our research and making sure the data and information is accurate and we're putting a good price on this property. But in general, we're just trying to have an overview so everyone understands what it's like, how to work the system, and then we can help answer any additional questions after that.
Cool.
All right, so this is a lead in Brivity, Jen Donahue. Some of you might know her. She is my wife. So Jen's account, we have a seller here, which is actually mislabeled in the account because, well, actually it's labeled correctly. She would never sell. I wouldn't let her. But in this situation, we're going to pretend that Jen is a seller, and we have a home address here for Jen. And so we're going to scroll on down, and we're going to see that we can create a CMA. So we're going to add a new CMA report. This is like a simple way to do it out of Jen's account. Of course, you could still go into Brivity CMA, log in, and do the same thing. But I always like just running it out of the account of the person that we're going to be using. Would you have any other insight on that, Bob?
No, I think that's smart, because it's gonna pull over a couple pieces of the information that you don't have to go fill in, right? It's gonna automatically grab her address out of the deal there. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense to do it this way. Really quick, Brandon, that yellow sheet, Donna just gave you guys the links for the yellow sheet and the green sheet, basically the seller information sheet. We print them around the office on a yellow sheet. The buyer information sheet, we print them on a green sheet. But here's the deal, Brandon, just bring them down and print them on a white sheet, and they'll be white. So the background, it's just the sheet Donna gave you. It'll just whatever color paper you print on, you'll be good. But there's those two sheets. Donna, thank you so much. She dropped those for you guys in the deal. So no, Anthony, right the same way you did it, right from the CRM, I'd start that CMA, which drops us right in here, pulls Jen's name in, pulls her address in, like we see right here on the screen immediately.
Yep, pulls her address up. We see that there's a photo from Google Maps of the listing. Now, completely up to you guys. Sometimes if I'm in the area, like yesterday, I was out in a neighborhood, you probably know it, Bob, up in Birch Bay Village, and I was in this community. And while I was up there was some sellers that I knew in my database about. I actually drove by their properties and I took photos. I took photos to show that I've actually been by there. I don't always have that opportunity, but in that situation, I just took them and I saved them, and then I'm going to upload them into Brivity. So I have that photo to come back to if I'm ever doing a market analysis on it. I also wanted to see what their properties are like. That way I'm a little more educated on it. So you could go ahead and put a subject photo in here. I think personally, it looks a lot more professional than this Google photo here on the side, but completely up to what you guys want to do. Of course, we're going to check our property type, making sure we're residential, but of course you can switch to condos, townhouses, commercials, all these different sub-property types. We're going to double check, make sure our bedrooms and bathrooms is accurate. So I'm always going to come to tax records and I'm going to look, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what did it sell for, square footage, lot size, year built. Of course, I'm going to cross-reference that with the yellow sheet. Turns out I talked to Jen. Well, there isn't just one bathroom. There's two bathrooms. So I had to update that to a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. And then the square footage we had to update. It was showing an unfinished basement. Turns out there's a finished basement. So it's 2,590 square feet. And then we, of course, have our accurate lot size. I know in our area, sometimes we have some properties that are in the county. One thing I always make sure to double check too, Bob, is there another lot attached to it? Sometimes there's a house on a 1/4 acre, but it has 5 acres connected to it, and it's over a 5-acre lot. But I only was looking at what the house was on. So double check that kind of information as well. Is there anything else connected to it? One mistake that happens in here a lot that I see, Bob, is using a special character like a little comma there. That'll kick this thing back out if we use special characters, or at least it has in the past. So I always get away from using special characters. Just make sure that we throw in the exact amount on that. Now, when coming down to the comparable search criteria, this can be good and it can be bad. Now, normally it depends on the market, right? But normally in this scenario where we're at now, I don't have a ton of properties to choose from. It's not like I can just pull this up and I have 20 actives, 20 pendings, 100 sold to choose from. And so normally for us in our area, I will go ahead and start to get rid of some of these minimum and maximums for a couple different reasons. First reason is maybe the input data was put in wrong. I was looking up recently, there was a sold home. It was sold unlisted. So it sold off the market, but the agent who sold it, they actually put the data in the MLS because you can do that in our area. Well, when they put the data in, since it was such a quick sale for them, they didn't really care. They put all the incorrect data, but it's a really, really good comparable. So I'd hate to miss things like that. So I always start out just kind of getting rid of some of these minimum and maximums. And of course, I learned a sweet new trick from Bob yesterday. So we'll touch base on that. And I just leave it completely open to start, just kind of to get a feel for it. As we start on the sold off market date, it goes back. If we leave it at any, it'll go back as much as 2 years. Could be reasonable depending on what you're trying to price, but realistically, we know an appraiser is probably going to go back, 60, 90, 180 days. Maybe they'll stretch it to a year. Tough to say. So I know for this area, there's not a ton of sales in the past 6 months. So for now, I'm just going to go back to a year and see what things are looking like. And I'm going to spread this out a little bit because I know this neighborhood's fairly big. We're going to go about 1.5 miles on this one, and I might even adjust that and make it bigger. Of course, if we're searching for like unique properties, acreage properties, things like that, I've gone as much as 5, 10, 100 miles out. We were listing a property last year that was so unique, I had to search the entire state of Washington to find comparable sales for it because there was nothing like it. I mean, it was such a random type of property. But in this scenario, we can go ahead and start out with this. Now, once we've collected and made sure all this is accurate where we want to be at, we'll just go ahead and click next. If anything was inaccurate, it would have denied us from going to the active, and it would have had a little red box around one of those things saying you got to fix the criteria.
Now, real quick, Anthony, before we dive into these next couple steps where you're going to go pick out 5 actives, 5 pendings, and 5 solds, let's talk about that 5-5-5 concept for a second. This is the method that you guys use on the Ben Kinney team to price properties. But 5-5-5, what is it? And it was pretty obvious, right, as we kind of move into this. But just give me the quick overview on the 5-5-5 method.
Yeah, so this is a method that Ben Kinney came up with years ago, and he would do this when pricing properties. We know how appraisals work, or at least in our area, an appraiser is going to pull up 3 sold properties, and then they're going to go off at just those sold properties. But the nice thing about going with active, pending, and then sold is we get a lot more information that an appraiser is not going to provide us just with the sold ones. So we're going to be able to see active, what's our competition? Were they on the market this week? Have they been on for a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years? What's been going on? What are we dealing with as far as competition, and how many days on the market have they been on? And how do they compare to our listing that we're working on? Of course, we'll have the pendings. I don't know about you guys, but whenever we go over pendings, before I go meet the seller, I call all the agents that are pending and I say, hey, I'm pricing a home in the area. Feel free to tell me what you will. I was just kind of curious, where are you guys at for price? Are you right around the list price that you have in the MLS, or did you guys get more? Or did you get less? How many offers did you have? Did you have much interest? And I just get a feel for what's going on. I take some notes on that. That way I really look like an educated agent when I'm going to meet with the seller, because they might say,
I assume really quick, I assume that like some agents will tell you nothing and some agents will tell you everything, including like what the concessions were, right? I mean, is it that varying in how much, info people are willing to give up on a pending?
Well, I think most of us as realtors fall in the disc profile. A lot of us are high eyes, and high eyes like to talk and like to tell us a lot of information. So just ask a couple questions Was curious if you could tell me a little bit more. They'll spill the beans most likely, but you got to keep good relationships with the agents in the community too. So a lot of these people I've worked with, I've done deals with, if they call and ask me, I'm willing to give them information, of course, to a point. And usually we get an idea or a range. So yeah, that's a good point, Bob.
Cool.
So yeah, that'll be the actives and pendings. And then of course the sold, we already know the data, we already know the information. Only time I have to follow up with an agent on that one would be if they just didn't put all the data in there. Hey, just wanted to double check. I don't know if anybody's ever gotten that call from an appraiser. Hey, we were just calling, we seen you sold 123 Main Street. Was there any concessions on that? Was there any other credits that maybe we don't know about? I think those are always important to know, because who knows, maybe there's this $20,000 credit because the house looks a lot better online than it showed in person, that we can go ahead and portray to our client, hey, there's big credits there because the house was not as in good condition as it might have looked through the photos.
Cool. All right. So we've run that first page on the Brivity CMA that basically identifies our subject property and then allows us to set some parameters around the properties that we're going to go looking for as one of our 5 actives, 5 pendings, and 5 solds.
Yes. Yep. Exactly, Bob. And the nice part about this is on the map, I love the, for me personally, visually, I can kind of see like what's going on around here. And some of the first things that I love to do on a map is just put my cursor across like what is around here that's really close by, like a neighbor's property. Because I don't know about you guys, have you ever had like a seller go and say, well, you didn't bring up my neighbor's property, like that one was down the road. So you guys need to be familiar too, even if we're not going to use it, like we got to know about the neighbor's property down the road. We didn't use it as what we would call in the business a comparable sale, but we do need to know about it and let them know, yeah, I wasn't able to use that as far as our data goes because it was half the size and only a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, but I am familiar with that property. Also, take the time, go preview some of these properties in person if you can, a day ahead of time or a couple hours before. So that's usually where I start out at, Bob, is like, what's close by? What can I start using? Now, we're seeing like, for people that know your area, this is like the low end of a hill, and this goes up a big hill to the high end. As we can see, the further we work up this hill, the more expensive the prices are getting closer to the lake. So I can kind of start to judge like, hey, we're not having much of any active competition, which a lot of us are going to want to put 5 in here for sure. Well, we might not always be able to put in 5. And I could expand this far enough that I could go into other neighborhoods, but those neighborhoods might not be the same. And it differs in our area where it could be the same in your neighborhood. So don't feel like you're forced to put 5 active properties in here. Ideally, we'd love to find 5, but you're not always going to find 5. Now, if there's too many on here, Bob, another thing that I like to do is go ahead and sort it. And you guys can sort accordingly. You might already kind of know a price range that you want to go off of. So maybe you price high to low. Maybe you want to go off of bedrooms or bathrooms. Another favorite one of mine to sort off of is based off a square foot, because I left those parameters completely open, right? I didn't make very tight parameters yet to start. So I might start out with square foot saying, I got to find stuff that's close to 2,800 square feet, or sorry, 2,600 square feet. As we can see, the data is right here that we can keep going back to reference. Now, I'd always made a mistake, and Bob taught me a trick yesterday that instead of having to go back to the start to start this over every single time, there's this little box right up here that's highlighted. I can click on here to edit my filters. So I might say, gosh, there's way too many listings on here with a high square footage above 3,000 square feet. I don't want all those. So maybe I go ahead and put a little buffer in there and I do 3,500 and then I click apply. Okay, I just got rid of some of those ones that were way, way too big. So now that we're starting to see some of these square footage ones, we can go ahead and do a couple of things. We can add them right in there if we want, bring them back out. Maybe we click on them and we start looking through some of the information. Okay, 3 beds, 3 baths, built in 2013. We got a lot size here. We can see it's on a hillside. We start scrolling through some of the photos. We can read the description. We can look at the feature sheet. We can get a lot of information based off of this before we decide, like, is it a contender, or this one's not quite the same property, as it's been updated too much, it's not going to work. And we can go ahead and slowly start to work our way through these. So I'm going to go ahead, for sake of time, pick a couple of these, just because we're not going to be able to go through all of these and really work hard on trying to find an exact value. But that being said, we'll go ahead and add a couple of these that are in similar square foot range, but drastically differ in price. So now that we've picked a couple of these, don't feel like you have to have it perfect, right? Go ahead. We can go to the next step here on the arrow, or click to pending and move on. If you're starting to think of something like, oh, you know what? I don't think I added the one in. I don't remember seeing that one. That was a listing there. That's okay. Go back here, look at your parameters. Maybe you're like, oh, I gotta change up my radius. I wasn't far enough out, or whatever it may be. So don't feel like you're stuck on going to the next one. And we'll move our way on over to pendings. Now, when we're getting to pendings, again, our goal is to try to find as many pendings as possible that are accurate. And we see in this scenario that there's more pendings than there was active listings, which is great. So we can go ahead and scroll in here and start to look a little bit more on these ones that are close by. And this is where we'll start to find some really good data. And you might even be like, oh man, I don't know if that's a good one or not. Just go ahead and add it so it's in your queue. I like to go ahead and have a couple in my queue. Sometimes I'll fill all these up, and then I'll be like, well, there's another one. There's this one at 860. I think it's a better comparable. I might have to remove this one to go ahead and add this one in there. And I'll start running down the list and trying to find more and more properties that fit in these parameters. And then you might be like, well, you know what? The more I think about it, that's not a very good one. Or maybe you need to check out this listing to make sure it's accurate as far as the square footage. You'd be like, man, that seems kind of small on square footage. I wonder why that is. So an easy way to do that is just to scroll down here on the list if you've already added it, because sometimes it clicks it off the map so you don't have too much information in front of you. And you can just come down here and find it really quick, pull up the listing, go through the photos. Maybe there's an additional space or things that you didn't see that got put in as far as incorrect data on the listing. And now that we've gone through our pendings, goal is to get as many as we can, but we're not always going to. Again, if we need to come in here, change any criteria, awesome, we can. We can make sure that it fits some of our minimum standards, click view results. As we see it, updated it, took a couple away, maybe even jump back in here into active to reference something else. Awesome, now we're moving our way forward. We're gonna jump into the sold properties. Now this is like, whoa, it's a lot of red here, and it might start to be a little bit overwhelming. So again, I like to zoom on in, work my way around here, and not just start clicking, right? Not start getting clicker happy. But another easy way, again, we can start pricing, because we might start to see a pattern here with active and pending listings. So maybe we start with, hey, let's go price low to high. And we scroll down and we're seeing a lot of stuff in the 7, 8, 900,000 range. So let's start to look in that one specifically, like what's selling in this 7, 8, $900,000 range. And we can start to run through some of these listings. And then that helps us a little bit. Or maybe we hit it again with the square foot and be like, man, it feels like some of those were kind of small on square foot. What are these ones selling that are closer to 20, 25, 2,600 square feet? And we can start to pull up these ones right here and see the square footage right there. And we can start to add some of these in there as well. But again, I always like to first go off of what is it that's sold that's the most recent and closest by to us. And you can be like, okay, there's one here down the road, almost exact same square footage. We're going to add that. There's one on the same block. We're going to add that. Another one up the road from it, just a couple houses down. And we're starting to see some patterns here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just add 5, like we talked about. And I'm like, okay, I got 5. Well, I don't want to be done yet. I'm going to go back and look and be like, okay, I got one here that's really small. It's on the same street, so I definitely need to know about it. But it's not even 1,600 square feet. We're about 1,000 square feet smaller than this one. So I'm like, okay, I gotta make a change here, and I might see this one that looks a little bit closer on square footage and would be a better one to use. I'll just go ahead and remove this one out of the queue, add this one to it. Now, I know a lot of people are like, well, but what if there's like 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 properties that are like it? Well, this is where you're really going to have to do your due diligence, either knowing the neighborhoods, or you did a really good job on that seller information sheet and you asked all the right questions. And it might come down to, you know what? This one, I'm going to have to remove it. This is like so close. It's on the same street. It's just too big. And the one down the road from it's a little bit better, a little bit more similar in style to that one. And then we'll go ahead and use that. Take the time on this. One thing I love to do, Bob, is I like to create one of these and then come back to it later. Sometimes I just start to get a little bit, I don't know, I'm starting to get a little confused on this one and this one. And maybe I'm just tired. Maybe I need some lunch. I have no idea. But sometimes it just becomes a little bit stressful. So one thing I would recommend is if you're having trouble, take a break, walk away, come back to it at a later time so you can really make sure that you're getting the correct data. I've done that so many times where I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, why am I using this property on St. Clair? Like, it's nowhere close to that one. I need to be using this Brookstone property. I knew I should have yesterday. I just had to get a little refresh. So make sure too to take the time to do that. A lot of times too, which we'll talk about, I'll just send this to myself first before I even send it to the client if I'm going to be emailing it out. And I might just sit on it, which means we're not doing this right before we go on the appointment. I've seen too many agents, including myself. I'm not to say I've never done this, right? Where we go ahead, we rush. Okay, I got a listing appointment in 2 hours. I got to get these comparable sales together and get it ready for the listing appointment. Come on, guys, that's a no-no unless that's a situation you call to cancel. They want you over in a couple hours. Well, great, you got to go ahead and boogie. But in most scenarios, you have a day or two in advance to put this together. So I ask anybody that's going to be going on listings and meeting with sellers face-to-face, please try to do this 24 hours in advance to your appointment. And take the time to come back to it and look at it a second time and further evaluate so you're not bringing incorrect data.
Love that. I love that. That's great advice.
Now that we're in off markets, these are properties that came off the market and did not sell. I think they're important to bring up, especially if you have that seller that's all like, yeah, but my property, we'll bring this one up right here. My property's worth more than 750,000. And we're like, okay, that's a good, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's look at one that tried at 750 and didn't have any luck. And then we can go ahead and pull some. It was on the market for 21 days. It's 2,400. We can go through the data. How do you think this one compares? And we can use this as a property that didn't sell in that amount of time frame that could help you guys in making sure you're not overpricing listings in the area. So sometimes there's some that are great to use, sometimes there's none. But please take the time to look at off-market listings. That's how I portray it to a client and be like, you don't want to be the listing it didn't sell and comes off the market, do you? Well, I think with that pricing strategy, you could be at high risk for it.
That's so just by the way, the off markets in here are either canceled or withdrawns, right? So these are things that they tried to sell and they're now off the market. They didn't end up as a sold. They're not a pending or an active any longer. They're either a canceled or a withdrawn.
Yep, they'll be a canceled or withdrawn. I've also seen, and I'm not for sure too, Bob, about the data. I've also seen sometimes there's one that's sold, but they canceled it or it expired and it got relisted with the same agent or with a different agent. I've sometimes seen that data pop up too. So that could also be good. Maybe binding sold and it canceled at 729, 800, and then it sold at 699 or something like that. That could be a great one. Hey, I just wanted to, show you that they were at a higher price and they had to drop it down to a lower price in order to get it sold.
So, Kalish, that data is coming out of the MLS, and it's essentially, again, property goes active, and then from there, it either moves to pending and then to sold, or it comes out of the MLS. And so we're just tracking those properties that at one point were active and then were either canceled or withdrawn from the MLS is what that off market is. It's not like FSBO off market for sales. It's things that were on the market that did not sell and are no longer on the market, to Anthony's point, so that we can maybe showcase to them something that was priced, maybe at that really high price they'd love to get, but that house didn't sell at that really high price.
Yeah, I never get into a discussion with the seller like, no, you're wrong. This is what's right. It's so easy to be right because we're on their side. We're on their side, right? Like, no, I agree with you, Bob. Like, I think you have an amazing house. Like, I think your house should be worth more money, but this is what the buyers are showing they're willing to pay for your house, a house like yours in our current market. Let's look at some more information. Here's the ones that failed to sell. Here's the ones that sold. Here's the ones that are pending. Here's the ones that are active. So it's always back to the data, because they'll ask, well, what do you think? What do you think my house is worth? Well, I think your house is worth a heck of a lot more. Unfortunately, we're going off of what the market shows, and this is what the market's telling us. So a quick results page here on the 6th step. And it's nice to go ahead, check this out, hit the down arrows, kind of see where we're falling. Okay, we got these three actives, we got these pendings. They go ahead, throw the averages down here on list price, square footage, price per square foot, lot size, and days on market, which I think is really, really helpful for us to look at. We can kind of see a comparison of where we're at, where we've been, what's been going on. We can double check too, okay, bigger bedrooms, less bedrooms, and so on to have our full data. This will give us a total listing summary, which is nice as a reference to kind of see where we're at. And then now that we've been so educated by doing all this due diligence, digging in there, finding all this information out, we should have somewhat of a pricing range. And whenever I am going to go to a listing appointment, I always want to have a price range. What is the low price range and what is the high price range? And it could be off of this total listing summary, or this total listing summary could be a little bit higher than it actually is. And so I might know, like, hey, I know that there are some higher price ones that sold in here at 875, but based off of the data, the low price is probably closer to 825,000, and the high price is going to be around that 850,000. In this price range, I'm usually in about $25,000 increments. And of course, this is a range, low to high. I don't want to give them $100,000 range. Like, how do you make a decision off of such a large range? Maybe if we're in the 1.5, 2 million, 5 million. Maybe you're in Southern California selling $20 million houses. Of course, you can have bigger ranges, but in our market here, average price point, we would be looking probably around a $25,000 range. We should see here, okay, average days on market is 29. We see a lot of these. Some of these took a little over a month, 2 months. Our active ones that are on the market have been within 2 weeks or less, average of 9 days. So I always like to play it safe. I don't want to guarantee anything. So I might go anywhere from 5 to 7 days on the short end, but we could see as much as 60 days right here. And you might even put a buffer in there up to 70 days. That way they know, like, hey, it could take a little bit longer than expected if the market's not accepting our price. And of course, we'll talk about price adjustments and things like that. When we come to publish the CMA, this is where it's up to you guys. Are we sending this to the seller directly? Well, if I'm going on a listing appointment, I'm not going to send this directly. I'd rather go ahead and plug in an email, have this sent to myself, and then this will go ahead and give us a live link that'll look just like this report right here. And so this is what the client would see if we emailed them this report. and a nice introduction on myself, what a CMA is. It talks about the subject property, where it's located at, maps all the listing outs for active. So A1s are active, 3 actives, P1, P2, pendings, and then the S's for solds, and then the O's for off market. And then we can go ahead and get into all the details on here. Scroll through, sees everything that we saw. You go all the way down to the bottom, and that'll have our suggested list price with our range like we just finished with, which is nice. We can also have a little bit more market data in here on these graphs.
Real quick,
again,
Anthony,
if you send that to yourself,
if you were up at the top of this thing, and let's say you were meeting with a high D seller and they're like, oh, yeah, just get to the point, how much, like use that little hamburger menu up there, and you can drop yourself like right down to the suggested list price, for example, by clicking, boom, you're just right down at the bottom of that thing. So that menu there will help you guys move through the different sections of this thing without having to scroll all the way down while your high D seller sits there, staring daggers through your face.
Good tip. Yeah, that's a really good point, Bob. Like, let me see if I can find it. So make sure that you are practicing this a few times too, because you don't want to be that agent going over there, new technology that you're not super familiar with, and then looking like fumbling through it. It's not going to look very professional. So yeah, know the ins and outs of this thing. And normally when presenting the Brivity CMA, Bob, the best way I found to present it is through an iPad or something digital like a laptop. Bring it on with you and go through that way, and make sure you can go through all of the sales. I also, unless it's a high D, I like to read through the marketing remarks on these listings. I think it's really important that we not only show them the data, bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, location, but that we also read through the marketing remarks, and we go ahead and emphasize certain things. So we're reading through there. Okay, but the first listing is this one. It's a 3-bed, 2-bath, a view of Bellingham Bay. I take a little pause there, like I'm emphasizing a view because this house had a view. 3 beds, 2 baths on just over a 1/4-acre lot, upgraded bathrooms. We're really emphasizing like the things that are similar because we're trying to get our point across, right? Like this property is very similar to your property, and I'm making sure that you understand that. And that's usually what I do too when they come back to us, Bob. Well, what's it worth? Like, well, what's it worth? Well, out of all the sales, Bob, that you thought were the closest to yours, which one stood out? Well, this one was kind of close. I agree, that one is close. Do you remember this sale? Let's bring that one back up again, Bob. Let me read through it again really quick, and then I'll read through it, emphasize appropriately. What do you think about that one? Yeah, now that you mention it, that one is pretty close. Okay, so we have 2 properties that are really identical to yours that are sold. That puts us in the similar range that market data was showing. Is that a range that you would want to accept an offer in?
So Sal, the program he was using is Brivity CMA. So Brivity's who put on this webinar. Anthony uses Brivity as his CRM, and this is a part of the Brivity platform is this CMA product where we take your data, Sal. So whatever MLS you're a part of, we connect into the data from that, and we bring it into this tool that you guys can use to basically do what Anthony did today, which is that 5-5-5 method of pricing properties. So Laura King Montana said, if your market has so few comparables or not great comparables, how do you know how much to adjust each comparable, like for square footage? And Lauren, so what Anthony's doing here is he's finding the best properties, and the CMA tool itself is making those adjustments when it goes to give him that suggested price, right? Like it has an algorithm built into the CMA tool that's saying, okay, like these, like if his house was 2,500 square feet and he's got a 2,400 and a 2,600, it's making those adjustments in price based on some of those factors that it sees on that listing, based on an algorithm, Lauren, that essentially Ben Kinney wrote. With a bunch of our really smart developers to, look at things like price per square foot and lot size and some of these different variables, but we've factored that into the actual software, Lauren. So Anthony's not sitting there making an adjustment on, one property that's 150 or 200 square feet different. He's using that as a comp, and the software is making the adjustment. I'm not missing anything there, right, Anthony? Or speaking out of turn, you're the guy using this every day.
No, not at all. I think that's a really good way of explaining it, Bob. And I think just to finish the presentation as far as how to use this system well. Again, I went through it quickly, right? I would take more time to do this. But like I mentioned earlier, maybe I got a little tired. I'm like, I got to go from it. Finish the CMA. Go ahead, send it to yourself if you want to send it on out. And then you can come back here. Now we're in Brivity MA, which is part of the Brivity platform, separate website. And we can come here and see, okay, where is that CMA that I just sent out? Pull up the CMA. Great, I just made this one. I can click on these three little dots here, and I can come back down and I can start editing this again. I've also done that too, right? Like, what a great way to have this data. Has anybody ever gone on an appointment and they're like, this is great, and then something came up as a condition, they're not ready to sell, and we threw away all that data. We didn't come back into our CRM. We didn't update any of that data. And so now it's a year later of us following up with them, and they're like, hey, what do you think our house is worth? And we're like, I don't even remember what I priced it at a year ago. Like, where do I find that? We can come back and look at that. That way we have that. And maybe we can just go ahead and steal off of that CMA and use some of that data still, because maybe some of those actives ended up selling and we can use those as comps and so on. So please make sure to have that, save it, because you can always come back to it way better than any other system because of that.
All right, Jen Anderson. That's a great question. You probably, like our sales folks have access to the tool in a lot of variety of ways. They very well could go in and pull up, your particular MLS, whatever it is, and drop the data in there, and you could get a look at it. I don't know that they'd be able to like give it to you to go play with for a week or something. I'm not sure. You reach out to our team and ask. Jenna, are the price adjustments state specific? There is some stuff built into the algorithm, things like pools. Like we don't really have pools up here in Washington, but I know in Arizona that's really important. So there is some stuff like that that's built into the algorithm. I don't know specifically what state you're in or what adjustments might be different in your state than in Washington, for example, where we're all kind of from and is the brainchild of this thing. But if you want to, I'm Bob at bob@benkinney.com. If you wanted to reach out and give me your specific state, I could go ask our developers if there's any specific adjustments for your state.
Yeah, and I would read through the marketing remarks. So say you pulled up active listings and you're like, hey, I got to find one with a pool in there. There's no criteria for me to select pool. Well, it's not like you have 100 listings to choose from. Go in there, pick the ones that are the closest, find the ones that have the pool. It should be in the marketing remarks or something, or in the photos. And then you can go ahead and add those ones in, so you're picking the right ones.
Trevor, when you say manual adjustments, like basically at the end of the day, it gives you a suggested price and you can manually adjust that suggested price to whatever you want, but it's not showing you like, we subtracted 10,000 and you could add 20,000. Like it's not going to that level. Like I know some of the CMA softwares of the past would show you that like, it was discounting it $10,000 versus this other house because it had, 78 less square feet. Like it's not like that. You basically get a price at the end, Trevor, that you can adjust yourself. And it's one of the reasons we use that range, Anthony, right? We're like, yeah, sure, it gives us a number, but we don't know that's the right number. The computer doesn't know that's the right number. Nobody knows that's the right number, but we feel like that's pretty close. And so we give them a range, and we think on the lower end of that range, Anthony, it's going to sell in 7 days. And if they decide to want to try to get on the higher end of that range, they should understand that it may sit out there a little bit longer, right?
Yeah, I think it's really important. Like we're not appraisers. I know how appraisers work, and I'm sure some of you guys know how BPOs work, and you've done broker price opinions, and you've gone in plus this for an updated bathroom and minus this for a non-updated kitchen and things like that. That's not what we're doing. We're doing a comparative market analysis. We're comparing other homes. We're not doing a BPO or a broker price opinion or an appraisal. So this is going to put us into a range, which is really, really really important. And then we can go ahead and talk in the future about how do we go ahead and help a seller in choosing the right price range or right price in that range.
Anthony, in one day soon, I'd love to have you come back and take this next step with us, right? Which is okay, because you've done the listing presentation for us before, up to the point where we present the price. Now we've done the, okay, how did we find that data and that price that we're going to bring to the seller? I'd love to have you back in a couple weeks, maybe next month, and see if we can't get that last piece then, which is, okay, what does this look and sound like? And you did a little bit of it today where you were talking about how you highlight or enunciate certain things that you're trying to draw their attention to, but there's kind of a whole way that you present this thing, and maybe we could get you to come back and do that for us here in the future.
Always happy to help, Bob. You always help us out so much. We will do whatever it is anybody on here is wanting. Of course, there's recordings too, so anybody that wanted to go back and see the listing presentation, I'm sure they have it in the Brivity archive. You guys can catch that too.
Let's see, where is that that success dot, I don't know. Donna, do you know where Donna, can you pull the archive of our past happy hours? Because Anthony did that listing presentation on a past happy hour. Where is that? I should know. Gosh. Oh, Mastery. Oh, there it is. Mastery.brivity.com. Donna, you're amazing. If you go to mastery.brivity.com, you guys, and then go click to view past episodes, there's an episode a week or two ago with 2 weeks ago, Anthony, 3 weeks ago, with Anthony doing the Ben Kinney team listing presentation, which is fire. Like, if you don't have an amazing listing presentation, go just R&D, rip off and duplicate what Anthony did on that call 3 weeks ago, Jana. It is lights out. Kim, Lauren, Lisa, John, Anthony, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you coming and doing this for us. Martin and Mary, you guys have an awesome afternoon. Have a great Wednesday and a great rest of your week in real estate. Anthony Zapata, you're the man. I appreciate it, buddy. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Have a good week.
See you guys.